afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Propaganda Review with me, your host, Imperial Dane, master of reviews, propaganda, and other good stuff. We're off here to cover the game Heroes of Normandy, recently released on Steam. Apparently it's been in some production sometime before that. It is based on a board game by Devil Pig Games. It's developed by Cat Rapid and, well, put out by Slytherin Games, which generally do a lot of sort of turn-based games. So, what's it all about? Well, obviously, as some of you might be guessing over here looking at things, it's a World War II game based on Normandy. And as I might have hinted, it's based on a board game, which means it's obviously not going to be a real-time strategy game along the lines of, Company of Heroes. It's going to be turn-based. But of course, there are some further hints here. Looking right here at the art, it's a bit more stylized, and certainly this one bears a passing resemblance to a certain Clint Eastwood, so there might also be some more camp in it. And there might be something to that. It's basically a game here with multiplayer, single player, you got skirmish, you got these rogue campaigns, or roguelike campaigns they call them. Not quite fully roguelike, but I'll go into them details later on. You basically get around, well, 3 overall campaigns, then sort of split into 2 campaigns of 7 missions each, meaning overall there's about 42 missions just for these. Mind you, one part of the American campaign is very much here a tutorial, so you'll be a bit spending time there, but overall, there's a lot of content just there. And then, of course, you're probably thinking, you haven't really showed the game yet, and of course, I'll get around to that, just sort of trying to explain some of the initial bits here, but, overall, there's some stuff here. So, let's just casually grab a German campaign, because, I'm the Imperial Dane. And of course, again, we are the Axis of Evil. Also very important to note, this game isn't taking itself very seriously. Or the war, for that matter. So, if you're a sort of type, find that very offensive, this is probably not going to be the game for you. Again, very much here, we are the Axis of Evil. And, you'll have campaign briefings, and they will very much, again, played out, not frightfully seriously again. Not yet, mein Commandant. And what are you waiting for? The Chaos Commandant. The villagers are moving up with the cows who can destroy the village commandant. What is the point of being evil if you destroy a village already evacuated? Just go and destroy it! Yes, sir. Yeah, mein Feldmarschall. Clearly, this is not a game out to take this seriously. It's not, trying to be the next, great cinematic thing. And it rather bleeds over to a lot of elements of the game to a certain extent. It'll use a lot of sort of actual war elements, but, story-wise, art-wise, it might not put it. And again, you might notice here, it also bears a rather passing resemblance to the board game. I believe, I haven't played it itself, but quick Google at it, rather reveals a lot about it. So basically, it looks very much like a board game. You got a board here. There are some added effects. For example, here you got rain over the village. You can nicely see the squares here. Objectives are handed out there. For example, you can see here, and you also have secondary objectives in most missions. Usually, destroy something, you'll get a nice little bonus. You also got these boxes around, which provide you with additional efforts. Small effects can sort of provide a further buff to your troops. And so on. There are these stats here. I have no idea what they do. They are not at any point, I think, actually explained to the player. You can just sort of guess, that means he's good against infantry, good against armor, good against Dachshunds, I don't know. Stuff happens, basically. But again, you can sort of see here, objectives, secondary objectives. It'll generally point out those little things for you. Otherwise, the game is basically sort of divided into 3 phases. You got the orders phase, which is here, where you'll basically hand out the orders. The units you give their orders are basically then sort of active during the next phase, the action phase. So you have to sort of decide what to do. The amount of orders you get, so it generally depends on your officers and other bits there. Some which will be explained. And that sense, of course, targeting officers during a fight tends to be a good way of sort of denying your opponent orders, meaning, if you, for example, again, if I lose Hauser here, I'm going to be down to just 2 orders per turn. That's going to make a huge difference. Similarly, if we get Stuart here, he's going to be down to 2 sides there. So, some details there. So, we say hand it out. You also get a bluff order. I'm not entirely sure how effective this is in multiplayer. Well, more particularly against the AI, but most multiplayer again, it basically means, you're never quite sure, who's got what. Again, is it... look here, we got 5 orders, and of course my opponent's going to be looking, like, which one's, the bluff, there's always going to be that moment of doubt, and also, which one's which one. You can assume, you might actually get to be wrong here. So that's basically the first turn. And also there's another thing, that's initiative. Basically the Germans generally think, oh well, whatever start your campaign you're playing, but generally, you know, you start out with that, and then next turn your opponent gets initiative, so he gets to give orders first. There's also a bit of planning quite there, so while you might on the first turn start out here, you know, you get to go right away. Next turn, it's your opponent starts that, so you have to plan orders according to that, because all of a sudden you're, oh right, that one's get to move, and then it gets absolutely horribly wrecked before you can actually use it. So there are some details there. But otherwise you sort of get attacks here, that's basically what you can do. Also one thing to note there, it's generally quite happy to tell you all sorts of details. For example here, you know, about terrain, units. For example here we can see, you know, these are some little details there. What you can do, for example, if there's any shared assets, unit traits, for example, right here, order. Again, that's those little stars, and it can also assault. Again, those have some rules as well. And of course, tanks can do stuff. For example, they can, for example, fire on the move if you want to. Though, of course, not the main gun. And of course, you do that. And of course, you might be rolling. Oh dear, these are dice rolls. Yes, pretty much all attacks and such are resolved through dice rolls, which can make it a bit random, though. To the game's credit, it does make it a lot easier to try and figure out what your chances are. Basically, for example, right here we can see, well, I've got a pretty good chance here of hitting. There's no way in hell I can actually miss. So, for example, we roll here, and there we go. You never roll a 1, that thing's dead. Of course, here that creates actually wreckage, which you then had to clear out, and that, on the other hand, can become quite a bit of a problem. Trust me on that one. And then, depending on things, you might also be able to shoot a machine gun. But for example, here now, no valid targets. So we end here, move on. Your opponent doesn't have anything to do in this case, so we move on again. Again, now, for example, here, I have a very slim chance of actually pulling off a hit here with my tank. Very slim. But of course, for the purpose here, we'll just see what happens. Again, nothing happens. But if I did, though, what would have happened basically is then I would first have gotten a chart then for actually doing damage to the tank. That's a bit of a specialty of the game. I mean, some units can receive more hit. For example, you know, these basic infantry units, the fire teams, basically can resist more damage. More specialist units like the MG42 cannot. So there are also some details there. Reconnaissance unit, for example, cannot either. They can sort of hit ambush, which means unless they're spotted, they can't be shot at. Though technically, your opponent can see them, he just can't shoot at them. It's a bit funny like that. But again, if you sort of hit there, you'd give me a chart, then walk at damage, and then you either have to hit a 6, or you have to hit the same part twice to sort of blow up the tank, which means tanks can be surprisingly durable, even the smaller ones, even against bigger tanks. So of course, there's always a chance something goes wrong. You also get the option here for sort of suppressive fire, which generally tends to be more effective or well accurate than regular machine and gewehr fire. And basically, suppressing a unit means, well, it hits a lot worse during a fighting. It moves less, it can't shoot quite as well. It only lasts 1 turn though, but for example, say I've just suppressed a unit, I can then, for example, next turn attack it, if I could assault it, and then I have a better chance of actually, you know, horribly murdering it. And of course, these dice rolls, of course, means the game does have a tendency towards the random. Though, of course, if you sort of figure out the odds, you always plan it ahead, you know, you'll generally not get too screwed over badly by it, though of course there will always be situations where it happens. Of course, it's going to be frustrating, but overall, as I've played the game, I've never really felt so far, at least I've sort of been badly screwed over. It's only as I sort of got better, I realised, oh right, it was because I was doing that wrong, that wrong, that wrong. I wasn't stacking the odds quite in my favour, and you do have elements for that. For example, you can find, you know, special ammunition, which gives you a better chance on your shooting, for example, and of course grenades generally work nicely too. So there are all of these little factors you can sort of try to add into the game. Again, suppressing also gives you sort of more favourable odds, and of course certain units are just better on the attacks and assaulting, so those are all sort of little things you can sort of fudge about. There you go, enemy shoots, misses, so on. In that case, nothing happens. For example, main gun shoots, there we see, unit get hit, but due to it being a fire team, it doesn't horribly die, at least not right away. Now, of course, you also get chances to undo, but again, in that sense, the game does tend to sort of impart a lot of knowledge upon you. There's only been one issue where things got a bit odd, and you might ask, what was that? I'll get to in a moment, but here, we then get to the third phase, the supply phase, and again, that's also part of the game here, which I do think is clever. It's basically the part there where we sort of see the game is sort of trying about you to keep momentum. I mean, for a turn-based game, it tries to be a fast turn-based game. And that's also the thing here. Generally, every match would only last like 6 turns, maybe some 8, but overall 6 at most. And generally, considering those turns can happen very quickly. I mean, let's say you get screwed over by the dice. in most cases it's not going to make a huge difference. We can just restart. I mean, in multiplayer matches, of course, that's going to suck a bit more, but generally I don't think it's going to be having a huge impact there unless you're really playing poorly or just trying to grind your way through, in which case, obviously, you're probably not going to experience the greatest amount of success anyways. So those are all sorts of little details they can sort of keep in mind. And of course, stuff like these, you know, switch around. Oh, hey, the MD42 all of a sudden can actually do something if it actually gets a turn. So those are all sorts of little details to sort of help you throughout the game. And of course, again, sort of leads towards sort of a swift turn-based game. Again, sort of short matches, battles, engagements, and so on. Something a bit faster, not something where we sort of play like 30 minutes in a mission at one go. I mean, it might take you 30 minutes to get through one, but that's because you keep mucking up some and so have to try again because you do something really stupid. Like in one case where I did realise I was actually mistaking one area for the objective when in reality it was something nearby, and that was really awkward, actually. Of course, another way, generally, I mean, you'll have objectives like destroy these units, bring this bomb to this building, bridge, bring a file. But of course, there's also the alternative one, which is just kill everything, in which case you also win the mission. Little fun details there. There are also defense missions, by the way. They are also defense missions. They tend to be in the rarer side, but they are also there. So that's a little detail I'm just sort of reading because I don't think there's so much else to talk about here. Though of course we could try and show off here a little assault. Again, we'll just do that. Yeah, Hauser, he's generally one of the units. I think no, he does get a bonus, but let's just see here again. We attack. Again, not the best sorts, but again, just to sort of show how that works. Certain units, again, sort of get more dice rolls. And in this case, it actually works out. So, there we go. Successful assault. And he gets pushed away. So, in that sense, you can also use assault there as an element, so you're trying to assault positions. Buildings generally are harder to take than, say, for example, a bunch of bushes. And, of course, being out in the open is tricky. You also have to keep in mind, these little entrances here, they determine they can enter and can throw in grenades. That took me a bit too while to learn that one, which can also make some units in a building really, really annoying and unpleasant to deal with. So, some fun facts there. But overall, the game is good to give you the information you need before sort of making any decisions. And again, the whole, you know, showing you the odds with the dice is a very nice touch. And again, it means, you know, you're generally not left in the dark. The only part where sort of things get a bit odd is basically there's a sort of special area, sort of special defensive position, and they only explain it during the first Commonwealth campaign battle. That's the only point they actually explain it. Not during the tutorial, not anything. And also another thing about the Brits I should point out, they only get the campaigns. They do not get skirmish, they do not get a roguelike campaign, they cannot be played in multiplayer. They were basically sort of an addition that came afterwards, and I do feel that's a bit, you know, odd. Wait, what? Usually it'd be the other way around, you could only play in all the other modes, but not in campaign, but in this case, Cat Rabbit sort of went the opposite way. Apparently, if there's enough interest, they'll do it for the rest, but, you know, it will sort of be like, you know, for me, so why wouldn't you want to do that? But again, you get 14 missions, and there's, you know, also the other thing is, considering compared to the other armies, sort of what they can get in theory, they're actually sort of, you know, one of the more fleshed out armies. Actually, I get a game that here that sort of shows, well, not all of the units, but most of them. The thing is, though, the Brits get a bunch more. They get, for example, well, not a lot more hero units, which, by the way, are a thing. And you didn't really get to see that. You saw the commanders, but they are exist hero units. For example, you get Mr. Clint here, obviously based on Clint Eastwood. And, you know, he gets a special ability, which pretty much means, and this is the only unit that gets this so far, a hero. He doesn't need an order to be activated, pretty much meaning he's a unit that can always be used, no matter what. And he's got an assault, which really makes him a real pain in the ass to deal with if you're the Germans. Great if you're the Americans, though. Absolutely great. But the Brits in that sense do get a bit more, but they can't use it, which just feels even odder. They get a lot more armour, and they get a lot more units. They get both Canadian and sort of regular Commonwealth units, so that's a bit fun as well to sort of keep in mind. But there's a lot of these heroes, you know, for example, this guy's good at assault. And for the Germans generally seem to just have sort of heroes that aren't quite as strong, except for, well, the previous field marshal here, who's just absolutely evil in those situations. So there's a lot there, and I suspect that there'll be more added, because if you play the campaign, you'll find other units there. You'll find a German mortar team, which is not available here. You'll see Sturm Pioneers, Panthers, otherwise you only get access to Panthers of Force, for example here, if you want to play any of the other modes. So there's a little detail there. Apparently more content is being planned. Apparently some is going to be free. I don't know if there's going to be paid DLC. Can't say really. But again, there's something happening. There's an editor being planned. There's stuff about cards from the board game, which seems to add another element on top of everything else. And there's sort of more stuff coming. So it's a bit tricky when you say, you know, what we're all going to get in the end. I mean, this could turn out to be a really good investment so far, the $20, euros, or whatever. Or it might be a less good, but still pretty good so far for what you get, I think. I mean, 42 campaign missions, you get skirmish, and you get multiplayer, which apparently is actually so popular, they had to do some upgrades. And you also, of course, get the roguelike campaigns, which then, of course, in the skirmish, roguelike, and the multiplayer, well, at least some of the missions, do add another element, which I'll just be about to go into, which I do think is really neat. In fact, really, really neat. But again, you sort of get these heroes, which generally add some more unique elements. They usually have some kind of special abilities. For example, you got this guy who's really good at throwing grenades. You got Ludwig, the sniper. Helmut, the Panzerfaust guy. And you got Siegfried here with an assault rifle. And you got the Otto, the Panzerführer, who shoots really well, actually, and suppresses everybody. And for the Americans, got Clint. Obviously, again, Clint Eastwood. You got reference here to the guy Tom Hanks played in Saving Private Ryan. You got The Rock here, though I'm not so sure who should be a reference to. Probably not that Rock. And of course, you got Oddball here from Kelly's Heroes, and who basically is really hard to kill, since, you know, when he's getting attacked, he gets extra dice rolls, and he can sort of pick the dice roll that's the most advantageous to him, meaning he's going to be really difficult to take out. So there's a lot of, you know, neat details there. Again, the style's a bit more campy, a bit more artistically, I suppose, in some sense, but again, it's overall good, nice, fun so far. And then, of course, we get to the skirmish or the roguelikes or whatever, and that's again where things get a bit more interesting, because sort of choose here, and for example, you sort of have to unlock more, though, with these things here as time passes on. Of course, you get these bigger areas here. You can choose your site, you can choose the time of the day. For example, you know, late in the day, late afternoon, so that's also a few effects there. Choose your side, and then you can actually sort of choose your army. You have sort of pre-chosen one. You have to choose it for your opponent, but then you can, for example, say, well, you know, I'd rather like to make my own one with the resources here provided. So what then happens? Then, of course, you choose here. You sort of choose the elements that want to be composed. For example, you choose a company from here. You know, Panzergrenadier, 1st Battalion, Panzerlehr Regiment 901. You get some orders there. You can sort of choose more by sort of adding in an element there to that particular spot. Panzergrenadier Assault Group, Panzerschreck Group. You got access here to some vehicles. You also get access to stuff like these, you know, special ammo, grenades, veteran rerolls, which basically means you get to reroll, Panzerfaust, magnetic mines. You can choose the Zundup. You can throw in a Puma if you want to as well. And you get access to some heroes, though some have to be unlocked. Though apparently they're planning on doing that anyway, so it's a bit hard for me to again. I mean, they're basically planning out so much stuff. I'm not entirely sure what's going to happen and what might end up being true and not later on. But for example, they can sort of put together this kind of force here. Neat, isn't it? Some nice Panzergrenadiers here, supported by a Puma, and of course Heinrich von Kampf's the Aryan Plague. Well, of course, you could go for Helmut the Panzernacker or whatever your dirty little heart might desire. Maybe a Zundup for a bit of extra mechanized fun, and of course you sort of choose your opponent. Again, you can't really choose it, so you have to sort of choose more specific. And of course, in that sense, the skirmish is a bit more sort of smaller engagements. And then, of course, we also have the roguelike campaign, which works on the other hand. You sort of have these 6 battles throughout here. What's unique about it is when you build up your forces, though, which is again sort of like, ah shit, I had forgotten. Hang on. Had sort of tried out something that I'll just abandon here, restart. My apologies, that was very unprofessional done of me, but basically again, you rebuild, but then as you proceed through the missions, you earn gold for destroying units, and of course keeping your own alive, and then you just sort of slowly build it up. Which means, of course, sort of, depending on how you do, you can actually have a very nice, strong force as you proceed through the campaign, and again, more units, of course, you won't start so much, so, I mean, you have to be careful then the choices you make. And sort of, what do I actually want? And of course, as you build up, you get more access to more stuff. You might throw in some tanks, some infantry, some armor, and so on. For example, you then sort of look at the German campaign, where I'm sort of a bit further ahead, just as a quick example here for Deutschland. Bit of a saucy image there. Again, I'm at third mission, but I already managed to build up a lot of gold. And then sort of, look at the force here I've managed to amass. Of course, in the sort of more skirmish and such, you can actually get all sorts of place your troops about there, which does allow you to sort of plan further ahead. But, for example, this is my force here. I've got Otto, the Panzerführer. I've got von Kampfs, who I rather feel at the moment is rather vital, because of, well, some of the missions have Clint. Also, one thing to note here, when you've got tanks, you have to choose phasing as well. Pretty decently neat. And thing is, with Clint, he's really a nasty opponent. But yeah, those are sort of the things here. And again, we see here, for example, M10 tank destroyer, not available in skirmish, but it's here, for example. And again, sort of get some stuff there to do as well against your evil German opponents. So again, a lot of sort of elements there, and it's actually pretty fun. You're trying to find out different combinations and then sort of play through the roguelike campaign. I do think that's sort of one of the bits there where it's going to be the most fun. I do wish, though, again, that the enemy were more random. Problem is, you're always going to play up against the same opponent. I'm sure that might be for, sensible reasons for the developers, but it does mean, again, it's not too roguelike. I mean, it's roguelike like light. Very sort of limited on the rogue basic, because roguelikes are actually very heavy on random elements which you can't control and might in fact badly screw you over. Here there's only really the dice rolls, nothing further. But it actually makes for some pretty good fun, I think. So there are some option there for those players that actually want it. I definitely again think that's one of sort of the where there's more meat on it, in particular as they add further force, because again you saw there Panzergrenadier regiment, but again imagine you're further in the future, you might have, say, Sturmpioneer regiments, and looking at for example, some trailers, there were Stugs and Panthers and whatnot, SS Panzergrenadiers even. I mean, imagine you being able to sort of play through the roguelike campaign with an SS Panzergrenadier regiment, supported, by other fun bits. So there's a lot of options there, I think, in the longer run for the game. And then finally, you got the multiplayer. This is a bit more specific as well. It's sort of run around challenges. You can, for example, see a bunch here. And basically, there's sort of more predetermined missions. You have a defender, you have an attacker. You set it up there, and then sort of just play it out. Apparently, you can sort of, you don't have to sort of be playing at the same time. You can just do it, whenever it's convenient. You might start a challenge, and then someone while you're sleeping accepts it, plays out his turn, and then so play it out like that. I think I haven't actually had time to try it yet, but I think that's basically how it works, since that would actually make sort of the most sense, I guess. So there's sort of some difference there. Some armies have already deployed troops. Others have you buy them and deploy them, and you can sort of see there what kind of resources then are available through the different missions. I do think that sort of overall covers here Heroes of Normandy. An interesting package again for that low price of $20, euros or whatever. I paid a little less for it. Overall so far I've actually had plenty of fun with it. And again, while the campaigns are fun, I really find myself more drawn to the roguelike campaigns than skirmish, because again you get to build your own force. I mean, really, and this is probably just the nerd in me, but there's something infinitely more fun about creating your own force through this. Instead of just having to just choose a predetermined one. Who cares about that? I want to build up my own Panzergrenadier company there and choose the elements. I want veterans and grenades and bloody Lux tanks supporting it, or Otto the Panzerführer. So, I mean, that's for me a lot more fun. So again, I think that's really, for me at least personally, where there's a lot more, meat on the game. But overall, I mean, so far, enjoying it, quite a bit of fun. Again, the dice rolls can be a bit contentious, but overall, I think, and in fact, they're actually planning on some measures there, for example, to make it easy for some players, so it's less punishing. So, for example, the current state of the game is just going to be hard mode and stuff like that. Plus, a way to sort of ensure, if you get on the streak, though, it's not going to happen, which actually I think is a positive, because sometimes I had situations where I just kept shooting, and I kept rolling a 2 when I needed a 3 or above, and that's like, God damn it. So I can of course see some of the issues of the game, but overall, the developers seem quite active, helpful, and really intent on building up the game and adding more to it, which is overall pretty damn great. I think this editor will probably ask that more for people to sort of play with. Again, it's clear they're intending on adding more content, which again means more units, more fun to do overall, and hopefully they'll add British to skirmish and give them a roguelike campaign. And I hope in the longer run we'll also see more random roguelike campaigns, so there's a bit more fun that way as well. So I think that really wraps up Heroes of Normandy. Again, overall, if you like sort of, turn-based tactical strategy games, knock yourself out. If you like World War II, knock yourself out. If you like, campier stuff with heroes and the like, you know, not too heavily in the accuracy, knock yourself out. Again, if you really want to play with Clint Eastwood, Old Bull, and all those guys, you just charge through the crowds, knock yourself out. Of course, if you want to play with evil Nazis, knock yourself out. I mean, really, I think there's a lot of sort of charm to this game, a lot of fun. Again, it's clearly dedicated people knowing what they want to do, and that's good. It's focused, and it's fun. So I think that really wraps it up. Again, I'm enjoying it. I'll probably keep enjoying it. I hope they'll add some more fun stuff to it. So, Imperial Den here, signing out. Hope you enjoyed this. And if you can't get this game on Steam, you can also get it on Matrix Games, get Slytherin Games site. But I think you're better off just getting on Steam. That's probably going to be easier overall. So, here's a Normandie. Check it out. This is Imperial Den saying cheers and see you all another time. Bye.